Recently, my district has had quite a few conversations related to issues that were highlighted in Module 5. So I found this very interesting and enlightening as I went through these articles. In the first article, Barriers to Using Web 2.0 in 21st Century Schools, those three common responses of time, training, and availability are absolutely the same thing that I frequently hear from my teachers. Training being the big one right now. We did some initial training, however, the follow-up training has been lacking. Our teachers really need that to feel like they're continuing to step up technology to the next level that they would like to see it used in their classroom. It also addressed 21st century learners. I think this is something that we need to keep in the back of our minds continuously for what are we trying to truly teach our students. We're no longer just trying to get them to learn their arithmetic and their writing and their multiplication facts, but rather we are truly trying to develop the workforce of tomorrow when we only know a fraction of what that's even going to look like. Thankfully, administrative support is not something that we have had any struggles with, but I definitely see where that could be something that would hinder a district if they did not have the admin team on board with this. Looking at the damages versus the benefits, I think it's important to remember the necessity of teaching our students how to responsibly utilize technology. There's always the opportunity for whatever the tool is to be manipulated and used inappropriately, but there's definitely a need for our students to know how to responsibly use this and be able to apply it to various situations. For me, this is the one that kind of pushed me to developing some action steps and things that I need to do when I leave here, and that's focusing on those ISTE standards. I've looked at them, however, I have not gone through them with the depth and the intentional purpose of how do I apply these to my classroom. So working as the elementary librarian, I feel like this is something that I need to go back and I need to not only support my computer teacher, but I also need to see how I can be implementing these in my classroom to further expose our students. So the 7 common barriers that obstruct tech adoption in education. First thing I feel like is that use versus integration. If our teachers don't understand what use looks like and what integration looks like, then it's hard to move them in the direction of seeing that we need to fully integrate the technology into what we're doing. Similar to those teachers who want to use their textbook as their curriculum. It's not that simple. It can't be that cut and dry, but rather the technology should actually enhance what it is that they're trying to teach students. I think the technology plan also plays a very key role here for our districts. If we don't have a plan and we don't have a purpose with the vision and the goals and those steps to meet those goals, it becomes very difficult to get others on board with moving in a new direction. Access, whether it be devices or it be the internet, is always going to be a challenge. I feel like we need to take into consideration where we're at and see ways that we could address it and still be successful. For us, devices are in every student's hand. However, not all devices go home, and then when they do go home, not all students have access to the internet at home. Funding is also another issue. For us, we had a donor come in and actually say we don't want to wait on this to get rolled out to every grade level. We want to go ahead and just fund this ourselves. So thankfully that's not been something that we have struggled with, but could absolutely be something that could hinder various districts. Open educational resources are something that right now we're seeing some barriers with that. Our teachers are hesitant because they want something that's that all-inclusive package where they feel like they don't have to go in and put effort into rolling it out other than lesson prep the night before, and that's more so reading over the lesson prior to presenting it to students. I think that eventually we're going to have to move in that direction as well. But we've got to change some thinking by even our teachers to get that moving successfully. In digital divide, a quarter of the nation's without broadband. That kind of caught me off guard. I would have never guessed that it was such a large number. However, my husband and I just joined the city life about a year and a half ago, so we've only had Wi-Fi for the past 18 months or so. Before that, I was doing a lot of the media through our church, and a lot of that was done off a hotspot. So when we're talking about opportunities for our students, we need to make sure that they not only have access, whether it be through local establishments who are willing to say, hey, we'll let your students come in, we'll provide this free access to the Wi-Fi, or maybe an opportunity for students in the school to come in and utilize things like the library or common space outside of school hours. But we also have to look at that speed. There was nothing more frustrating than having to leave something running all night in hopes that it may upload by morning. And then if something happened to interrupt that, it was just you're out of luck and you had wasted hours of time. Looking at the open educational resources as the curriculum coordinator, this is something that I find very interesting. Looking at the cost of resources, for instance, last year we did a new math initiative, K-8. We spent roughly $87,000. So I definitely think in this day and age, we have to look at that cost. And when you're considering only paying for supports to open resources, we definitely have to weigh the perks of moving in this direction. Some of the other things that I really like about this is the versatility. Kansas has that additional 10% or 15% that they have gone in and they have now embedded into the different standards. So any textbook that we buy is not going to have 100% of the Kansas standards. However, if we were using open resources, we could go in and we could embed resources that would hit that 10 to 15% that Kansas has added additionally. It also keeps it a living document. All too often we let something become our curriculum and we set it on a shelf and it doesn't move. Open resources are those documents that you go in and you edit and you change on a continuous basis, and they really truly meet the needs of every class rather than just a wide span third grade, for instance, math. But you could really customize it to your students' needs. You do have to question, is it updated and is it relevant? But I think if we can get our teachers on board with being an active part of that curriculum process, then part of their work becomes going through it, recognizing when there's a gap between what students need to be learning and what they are learning. So looking at these questions, the digital divide I think is always going to be there, but I think as educators, our job is to build that bridge. So we can't necessarily eliminate the gap, but I think we can lessen the gap. We're always going to have some students who have access to things that others don't. However, for instance, like I discussed, those community spots where students can go and access the internet, or a time where the school is open and available. Things like that provide similar opportunities for our students. And that was one of the reasons why we opted to not go for a bring your own device program, but rather wanted to provide the devices, because then we know all students have the same quality of a device in their hand. Looking at the 21st century skills, there's a lot of skills that can fall into that category, but looking at the top 5 for me is that collaboration, flexibility, creativity, critical thinking, and then the technology piece. So we need to have students who are able to collaborate with one another, be successful in those collaborative activities, whether it be face-to-face or online. We need to be flexible in how we approach problems and creative in the solutions that we come up with. Critical thinking, I think, also encompasses our perseverance and our drive in students. They've got to be willing to seek out those answers, those options that maybe others haven't thought of yet. So again, creativity and critical thinking are very much interlocked. And then we know to be worldwide competitors in the workforce that they've got to be technology savvy. They've got to know how to use and manipulate technology to meet the needs of whatever the particular task ahead of them is. The global economy has kind of changed the way that I personally do some things. Accessibility is a big one. There's a lot of access to other options that before I kind of just had to take what was available in my community. However, now, for instance, I am just a few miles down the road from Pitt State. However, tuition at Fort Hays is much more reasonable. So there's the option for taking the online courses, which makes things much nicer at home. There's also online shopping and bill pay. The bill pay just really saves me time and efforts, but the online shopping, able to shop around and make sure that we're getting the best deal. And then it's also created this amazing opportunity for networking that before wasn't available in the same way that it is now. Although I feel I am pretty tech savvy. There are still some areas that I would love to see more training in. Like I said, with the ISTE standards, I've seen them, I've messed with them, but I don't feel comfortable with them. And I think a lot of that is my role is not a library media specialist. I am a math person by trade, so this is completely out of my comfort zone. So anything that would help secure me with those standards and kind of give me a better idea how to incorporate the technology into the library, I would be very open and excited about. And then finally, that district technology plan. I think that's something that anyone who's not been clearly trained on what their plan is, what those goals are, I think it would be very well spent time if time was focused on that for the teachers. I would dare to say that we are equipped with 21st century technology. However, we do not have a 21st century mentality. We have many items in our school. However, I don't know that we're to the point that we're actually using it to the capacity that would really push it into that 21st century technology. We're not utilizing all those skills. We're not pushing the critical thinking to the level that we should be. We're not forcing students to be creative in their projects. A lot of times we are just using technology. If we were being innovative in these practices, I think that was what would push us over the line from using to integrating. I think we'd be supplementing learning, we'd be enhancing learning. So we'd really be truly differentiating what our students were receiving rather than just adding it as a manipulative. I think we could be saving funds by using open resources. And I think those last three at the bottom, those are those 21st century skills that we want to embed into our students. We want them to be productive, competitive, and driven, not only in their education, but also in the workforce. So pushing them to go a little bit farther and be productive with their technology and the way that we're implementing it would truly move them into the next level. There are some disadvantages, as with every new tool that you're implementing. Change is always a little bit painful. So you will have some that will kick back from that. And then we also have the exposure for our students. Although we try to carefully guard what they're on, we cannot ensure that they are continuously on what they need to be on. So that is always a risk. And then also, especially in our lower grades, there is increased screen time that comes with this technology. So we have to be cautious as to minimizing that and making sure that we're still keeping our students healthy in the time that they're spending on the devices. Just as every other district, I'm sure we have had issues with cyberbullying and other inappropriate use. However, before that, we were able to establish clear guidelines, and those clear guidelines help guide the decision making after something occurs, as well as outlines the expectations for our students and parents. I do think that clear technology plan that also reiterates expectations and ramifications would be very beneficial here, and especially in those specific instances. So overall, quite a bit of information that we were able to gain in Module 5. I'm excited to learn more and to hear some comments of other people as to what they got out of this. At this